All right, so what we've been dealing with in class is being able to work with slope, being able to graph linear equations. So we started out being able to identify the slope, identify the y-intercept. Then what we did, we took it and we actually wrote equations from graphs, from tables, from coordinate pairs, and into the word problems. We were able to do that. Then we moved on and we actually graphed them. Well, what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to take it one step further. And we're going to look at equations that are in standard form, which means this: we have to actually take it from standard form, put it into slope-intercept form, and then graph it. But so don't mistake, when you look at this and you look at 3x plus 2y, don't think automatically that just because the 3 is next to the x that that's your slope. And you also don't want to think, oh, 8, it don't have any, so that must be your y-intercept, because that is not so. But what we are going to do is just a lot like an equation. We're going to kind of transform this thing down into slope-intercept form and find out what the slope is and what the y-intercept is and be able to graph it rather quickly. So the first thing I want to do when I look at this, I see I need to get it into y equals mx plus p form. So I have y equals mx plus b. And it's okay to go ahead and write that down, because then you have a visual to look at as you actually work through the problem. So I see that I have the 3x plus 2y. I want to solve really for my y, so I need to move this x over. So in this case, I'm going to use the inverse. I want to move the whole thing. I want to move the whole 3x. So the inverse of a positive 3 is I'm going to subtract 3x. I need to get that to 0. And what I do to this side, I have to do to this side. That cancels to 0. And really all I'm going to do is bring down my 2y, and I look, that's a positive 2y. So that I'm just going to bring 2y equals. Now I can't say 8 minus 3x is 5x or anything like that, because they're not like terms. So I can't do anything with them as far as combining them. But what I can do is this: I can start to put things where they go into the form of the mx plus b. For example, the negative 3x, I'm just going to slide it down just like it is. Negative 3x, and then slide the positive 8. So it's a positive 8, and just kind of slide it down into where it goes. Now I have some kind of form that looks like y equals mx plus b. I'm not quite finished, but I'm almost there. So the last step I'm going to do is I have to get y completely by itself. So I'm going to use the inverse of the 2y. But I'm not moving the whole 2y. I just need to move the 2. So really the inverse here is I'm going to divide by 2, because they're multiplying 2 times the y. So the inverse in this case is going to be dividing by 2. So whatever I divide on this side, I divide it all by 2. I have to do the same to this side. So in this case, 2 divided by 2, that gives me my y equals, well, negative 3 divided by 2, that doesn't divide evenly. So I'm going to leave it in the lowest form of the fraction. So in this case, it's negative 3 halves x. And then I say 8 divided by 2 is a positive 4. So now I have it in y equals mx plus b form. So now I have it in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this. So I start, just like the last lesson, I start at my y-intercept. So I'm going to go to my positive 4, and I'm going to plot it. Now, from here, I remember I want to rise and run. I want to go up and down first, vertically up and down first. So I'm going to go up 3. So that's a positive movement. And then I'm going to run 2, and that needs to be negative. So just like that. And then I can go up 3 again and over 2. Now I can go back to my y-intercept and go down 3 and then over 2. Negative, positive, because I have a negative slope. And I also want to remember that negative slope, the line is going to go downhill from left to right. If it's not going downhill from left to right, then I've done something wrong. So in this case, going from standard form to slope-intercept form, you end up with y equals negative 3 halves x plus 4. All right, now we're presenting one now that has just x minus y equals negative 1. So all it looks like is we have a bunch of variables that we don't have a clue what they are, but really we do. So what I want to look at, for example, when you see just a variable, go ahead and realize that what that's really saying is 1x minus 1y equals negative 1. Now again, this is not in slope-intercept form yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it. Just like what we did before, now that we have numbers, and if you want to write them in front of it, you can, whatever makes it easier for you. So for example, in this case, again, I'm going to draw my line to split it in half. I need to move the x to be able to start to get y by itself. The inverse of a positive x is minus x, or minus 1x. Minus 1x over here. So I got to do one side, I do to the other. That leaves me with negative y equals, well, that negative x minus 1, because again, that's a negative. Well, even though it looks tempting to say this is done, it's not quite done. You can't be left with a negative y. So what we have to do is we got to go through and do the inverse. Again, if it makes it easier to bring that 1 down to actually see it, go ahead and do that. So in this case, the inverse, again, I just want to get rid of the negative. Inverse would be to divide everything by a negative. Or if you want to say negative 1, whatever makes it easier. So again, that ends up with y equals. You have a negative times or divided by a negative. So that's going to leave that as a positive x, or positive 1x, negative divided by negative, plus 1. So now what I have is y equals x plus 1. So in this case, let's go ahead and graph it. It starts with plus 1. Again, I want to go with my slope. It's a positive slope, so I can go up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, or I can go down 1, over 1, down 1, over 1, and continuously. Remember, because lines go on and on forever. And that is x minus y equals negative 1 in slope-intercept